Michael here, School Programs Coordinator at the Wild Center in Tupper Lake, New York, in the heart of the Adirondacks. So for our activity, you can use any of the objects I have here. So I have a notebook. It's always great to record your findings in a science notebook. I have a magnifying glass to look a little bit more closely at what we're going to be exploring, pencil to record your findings, and then colored pencils if you want to add any information to your drawings if you choose to do so. So these are all optional. All you really need are your senses and a sense of curiosity. Today we're going to practice using observations, exploring our world and using our senses to learn a little bit more about it. I'd like to start off with a quote from the fictional detective Sherlock Holmes. "I see no more than you, but I've trained myself to notice what I see." I think what he meant by that statement is that every day as we walk around, as we move throughout our lives, we see so many different things, whether it's inside or outside. It's up to us to pause and take a moment, use our senses to really observe and notice and learn a little bit more about that. Today I invite you to come along and do some observations of your own. I'll show you some tools that you can use to be a little bit better and think a little bit more about what you find with an object that I find in just a second. But I invite you to pause your video here in a second, find your own object inside or outside. We just want to make sure that you respect that object and put it back if you took it from outdoors. I hope you all found an object. I found mine, this leaf right here. So first we're going to practice making our initial observations. An observation, you can use all 5 of your senses: sight, touch, smell, hearing, and taste. But today we want to make sure that we don't use taste unless we have permission. So first and foremost, we are going to use those observations, our different senses, to learn a little bit more about this leaf. But when you do, we want to be careful to not fall prey to our opinions and inferences. So something like saying this leaf is awesome, or I think it's maybe a little bit gross. Those are our opinions, and we want to be careful not to use those as we make our observations. Also, something like this leaf was eaten by bugs is an inference. I don't necessarily know if a bug ate this leaf. I didn't see it unless the bug is on it right now. So I know it has holes, and that's an observation. So our first prompt today to help us out as we make observations is I notice. So I want to make sure that we have our objects. I'm going to show you a couple ways to use that prompt, and then you'll have a little bit of time to work on it on your own. So first, I notice this leaf is red. I notice it has some spots that are a darker black color. I notice my leaf has holes in it. I notice that the sides are a little bit bumpy. I feel a little bit bumpy to my hands. I notice the top is smooth. If you get stuck with your object, you can flip it over as well and turn it around to look at all the different angles. You could use a magnifying glass to help you out. So I noticed that the back, the texture, is a little bit more rough than the top. So those are just some examples of what you could notice about your object. I want you to go ahead, pause the video, take some time on your own to make some observations of your object. Okay. Now that you've practiced using I notice, our next prompt is I wonder. First step into asking questions about our object. So this prompt, you'll start your sentences with I wonder, and then think of all the different things you'd like to know about it. So for example, I may ask, or may say, I wonder when my leaf fell. I found it on the ground. I wonder how long it's been on the ground. I wonder what tree it came from. I wonder what made the holes in the leaf. I wonder why the bottom is a different texture than the top. I wonder if this leaf changed color. I wonder when the leaf changed color, if it did. And I wonder why it's bumpy on the sides. So I'd like you to take a moment, pause the video, and think about all the things you wonder about your object. Remember to use that prompt to help you out. Okay, now we're ready for the third step. We've covered I notice, we've covered I wonder. Now it's time to think about how this object connects to your experiences, because those are super important in science as well. So we're going to use the prompt, "It reminds me of." So that could be anything from what the physical characteristics of this reminds you of, to experiences that you've had that the object reminds you of. So I'm going to practice a little bit, and then you'll have time to do so yourself. Okay, so my leaf, it reminds me of the fall, so it reminds me of different seasons. It reminds me of breakfast and what comes from, I think, the tree that this may be associated with. It reminds me of, it's a really, really nice bright color that was associated with my school. This reminds me of, on the back, the texture reminds me of roads or rivers and how it branches from a thick spot into smaller ones. It reminds me of a place. So this reminds me of the Northeast part of the United States. Okay, so now it's time for you to pause the video and think about your object and what it reminds you of. So you can take a moment, think about all the different things that your object reminds you of. And again, it could be physical characteristics of the object or experiences, parts of your life that it reminds you of. Reading about nature is fine, but if a person walks into the woods and listens carefully, they can learn more than what is in books. That quote by George Washington Carver, a plant scientist, farmer, and inventor, shows just how much you can learn by practicing observing as you explore the natural world around you. We spent a little bit of time using those 3 prompts and learned so much about this leaf, and I'm sure you learned a lot about your objects as well. So I challenge you to go explore maybe the room that you're in if you're inside, or head outside and do some exploring. Find some more objects, practice using the prompts. I notice, I wonder, and it reminds me of. You can learn so much more about the world around you. If you do need some more support and help remembering the prompts, you can go to our website, wildcenter.org/school programs, and find a little worksheet and some extra information there. So I hope you have a lot of fun and happy exploring until next time.